body of work is quite vast. It's covered everything from economics and history to culture, migration, and racial inequality.
The main thing that he's done, in my opinion, is to cause people to rethink their assumptions about all sorts of things, not just economics, but about race, about politics, about how we get along.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Thoughts by Jay Brown. Today, we're going to be covering a video that I should have had out last month, but due to my editing and rush job that I did the first time, and the second time I didn't edit it out the way I wanted it to, this is the third take on this. So with that, I just want to apologize that it is now March 5th when I'm sitting down to record this to get it out there. With that said, let's get over to what the actual topic is. Today, we are talking about Thomas Sowell. I start with this clip from a new documentary that is out on YouTube right now about Thomas Sowell and his life. And I think it kind of sums up Thomas Sowell in the best way that anybody could. With that said, I think the person to best describe Thomas Sowell's early years is Thomas Sowell himself. You may not like the source that I've pulled for this, because it's alt-right or conservative or any other host of labels we can give to it. But it is from the Rubin Report. And I think that it is actually probably the best segment that we could use, because it is Thomas, in his own words, describing, growing up in the South, moving up to New York, so on and so forth. So with that, next clip.
So I want to talk a little bit about your history for a bit, and then we'll move on to your new book. Born North Carolina.
Yes.
Grew up in the Bronx.
In Harlem.
In Harlem. Tell me a little bit about some of your formative years.
Well, I thought about it as I was doing the research for the first chapter, where I get into the birth order thing. Now, had my parents lived a normal lifespan, I would have been the sixth child in the family. They died young, and so I was adopted in infancy in a family as an only child, raised as an only child in a home with 4 adults. And in terms of what I found about the research on birth order, clearly that was a huge advantage. And so their misfortune was my good fortune. And moreover, the family in which I was raised moved to New York, which at that time had a far superior educational system to that in North Carolina, and far superior to what it is today.
So that's just a brief mention, and I'm not wanting to take away from other people's work. So please check out the links to everything below. All the clips, I will have a link to the original video source that I got it from, and please go check it all out. But with that said, Thomas Sowell, born in North Carolina, grew up in Harlem. At the age of 9, he moved up there just after school had ended, before school had started the next term. And so he spent his summer hanging out with a boy that was like a year older than him named Eddie, who taught him how to use a library card, how to take out books, how to return them properly, etc. And that got Thomas to actually get into reading. Something that I think is, even though it's frowned upon back then, is still frowned upon today, is the idea of reading books for the pure fact of enjoying reading, getting into a story. I mean, I don't know how many times I've said it about the book was better than the movie, because there's so much more that an author can do with a book than there is that a director can do with a movie adaptation from a book. There's certain things that can be presented on screen, and there are certain things that can't. But as he grew up, Thomas Sowell, when it was destined to go to a worse school than he ended up going to for middle school and high school, and he learned how to transfer. And then so on and so forth. He ended up dropping out of high school, going to work for Western Union, then joining the Marine Corps, and then going to school after that. So that laid the groundwork for Thomas Sowell as a person. It led to his ideas, or started to lead towards his ideas. Let's go to the next clip.
one of the things that I found out that was sort of amazing about your history, you briefly mentioned it right before we started, you were a Marxist at one time in your life. Most people will find this hard to believe, but it is true.
But it's not that unusual. Most of the leading conservative thinkers of our time did not start off as conservative. You had a couple like Bill Buckley and George Will. But I mean, Milton Friedman was a liberal and a Keynesian. Hayek was a socialist. Ronald Reagan was so far left, at one point the FBI was following him, you know? So there's a huge movement from the left to the right as people get older.
Yeah, I'm well aware, as I mentioned to you earlier, as a former progressive, I understand that movement in the modern sense.
And there you have it. He was a Marxist. Like many people, some people start out generally more left-leaning than others, all the way out to Marxism, Leninism, and Stalinism, all that fun stuff, all the way, and some start out more to the right, you know, all the way out to your fascists and things like that. And as we grow and we learn, we generally, as humans, migrate more towards a middle ground. Not always, and that's fine. People are perfectly entitled to their opinions and how they want to perceive the world. Doesn't mean that they're right, doesn't mean that they're entirely wrong. There are, you know, this is the problem with trying to be a free speech advocate, in the sense that people have a right to their opinions, whether I disagree with their opinions or not. And that goes for everybody on all sides of me. But what this reminds me of is the Winston Churchill quote that any man, and I'll quote this, any man under 30 who is not a liberal has no heart. And any man over 30 who is not a conservative has no brains, end quote. This quote always fascinates me because it's one that we want to be more generally helpful, especially at a younger age, because we don't have the experience in the world. We don't necessarily have all of the experience that the older generations do. With that said, when you get older, you realize that how are we going to pay for these things? How are we going to cover these social wonderments that we want to have? And it's not to say that we can't do it. It's just we have to be wary of how we're going to do it. Because, again, when you look at the way Social Security was set up and the way that the politicians have dipped into it more and more here in the U.S., we're not funding our future. We're funding the people right now, and there's less people behind us. So who's going to fund our retirement? And Social Security was not necessarily, in my opinion, meant to be a retirement fund for you to live off of. It's supposed to be supplemental. So, you know, you have a certain burden of responsibility to make sure that your financial well-being after you retire is one that you can sustain. So, be that as it may, I find it funny that Thomas Sowell was talking about how Milton Friedman was a libertarian and a Keynesian and had moved more conservative, or liberal and Keynesian, sorry, and you know, so on and so forth through his ages, you know, and that's kind of where I have picked up on Thomas Sowell, is that it's not that I think anything is inherently bad that's on the left, or anything's inherently bad on the right, or conservative, you know, liberal and conservative. I just think that we need to balance what is best for society, but also still best for the individual, because we can't have pure individualism, pure anarchy, but we can't have pure collectivism, because people have individual rights to own things. And we have a human nature to possess resources so we can survive. It's a basic instinct, you know. So with that, let's move on to the next clip.
First of all, I would disagree violently with the notion that the people are stirring. A very small handful of intellectuals have generated an enormous amount of noise. When I look at opinion polls, particularly if I look at opinion polls of blacks in the United States, most blacks in the United States do not take any strong position in favor of equality of results. In fact, most of the polls that I've seen of blacks put them, if you want to use this expression, very well to the right of most intellectuals on most of these social issues. It is not the people who are stirring, it is a handful of intellectuals. The question is not absolute equality, it's a question of what concept of equality you're aiming at, whether you're getting it absolutely or to one degree or the other. Are you aiming at a concept of equality of opportunity at the outset, or are you aiming at a concept of equality of results? It's also not a question of whether it's material goods only. Whether it's material goods, status, or whatnot, again, the same question comes back. Are you thinking about equality of opportunity, prospective equality, or are you thinking about retrospective results at the finish line? And I think that's the crucial distinction.
Okay, so with this clip, it's from a 1980s show called Free to Choose that was in part due to a documentary that Milton Friedman did. And the title of that documentary is Free to Choose. And every week or every episode, they would bring in a panel of people. Thomas Sowell was on a lot of them, or on some of them, I should say, not a lot of them, but point being, Thomas Sowell was on some of them to discuss the economic side of things. And what was discussed in this particular episode was basically the equality of opportunity or the equality of outcome. What is the better solution, per se? And I happen to agree with him that, which do we really want in society? The equal opportunity to achieve the greatness that we want, or the standard we want, or do we want everybody brought down to the same level? A lot of people see this as a bad analogy. Look at Venezuela, look at Cuba, look at the Soviet Union, at the levels, long term through their communist dictatorships. And you'll see that not everything balances out the way that they want them to, because communism, Marxism, doesn't take into account people's inherent want to collect resources for themselves. People want to have their stuff, their property, their food, their, so on and so forth. It's when you start getting into these central government ideas where you're having one group decide for everybody, it doesn't factor in that, hey, so-and-so is really great at this, but they're being told to do this because whatever reason. We don't need artists, we need workers, we need laborers, things like that. Whereas in a free market society, you generally have people strive to do what they want to do. Some people, like myself, it takes many years to figure out what it is we want to do with our lives. Others, they know right away. So with that, let's watch the next clip and kind of see what goes on here. You'll notice that he brought up pollsters or polling of Black Americans. And again, this is 1980s, after the civil rights movements, the civil rights acts, things like that, and the Great Society legislation put forth by Lyndon Baines Johnson. And let's see what the next clip has in store for us.
People have an ascribed status. It isn't as if government, by its intervention, creates it. People are born into this world in a given sector of a society, and many, many of them are born at the bottom of the society. The argument about equality of results was an argument that was linked to equality of opportunity. People recognized that unless there was a degree of equality in a degree of enough food, enough security, access to education, unless these things were available to all children, then equality of opportunity was merely a mockery. That's why equality of results became an issue, and it became an issue for black people in the United States, and they expressed their concern,
No,
whatever the opinion
You expressed
polls,
it, damn it, look. No, they did not. They did not.
They
Damn it.
expressed
Francis, finish it and then reply.
They expressed their will by their extraordinary participation in a protest movement that began in the late 1950s and didn't end until
I
the
have
1960s. Intellectuals were not in that protest movement.
You want me to
Black
answer or you want to keep
people were
going?
in that protest.
You want me to answer?
I finished.
Good. Black people have never supported, for example, affirmative action, quotas, anything of that sort. Wherever polls have been taking a black opinion on such matters of should people be paid equally or should there be this or that, black people have never taken a position that you described. So it is not a question of what black people chose to do. It's what you choose to put in the mouths of black people. It is what you choose to project. It is not what any black people have ever said anywhere that you can put your finger on.
It's what you choose to put into the mouth of the pollsters, as far as I can see.
I
Look
put in
at
the
the
mouth of the
leadership of the
pollsters?
black community.
Like most people, I have never seen a pollster.
If you look at the leadership of the black...
And here we have Frances Fox Piven, sorry, I forgot her name for a second, discussing with Thomas Sowell about what was the result of equal opportunity is with the end result, and with programs like affirmative action and things like that. And granted, you have to take this in context of the time when this interview was done or this debate was done was 1980. This is, at the time, people, and I'm going to trust Thomas Sowell's information. I could be wrong and he could be wrong, but people were not wanting quotas. They weren't wanting to be treated inferior and therefore needed to be raised up. They wanted to be treated as individuals and with the same respect and the same ability to try and move forward. There were and are systems in place to keep people down. Those systems are also the same systems that are there to help bring people up out of programs. We hear about the people who abuse welfare and food stamps and things like that because they make more money doing that than they do actually doing a job. So why not utilize why not utilize something that benefits you? I'm just saying. Not everybody who's on the welfare system is doing that. Not everybody who's on food stamps is doing that. I understand that. But it makes it harder for people who do need to get into those programs if there are people who are abusing those systems. I hate to bring up the disease that shall not be named on YouTube here, but the pandemic that started last year, causing people to go on unemployment, and then causing people to realize that, hey, with that extra bonus on unemployment, I make more money on unemployment than I do working. And employers realizing that, I mean, like, here, I'm just going to shut down and let you have it. I might be able to get the small business loan to eventually bring you guys back. And now we're hearing of people having to pay taxes on it. Shocker, you have to pay taxes on your unemployment benefits. I should know. I've been through unemployment twice in my lifetime and managed to know that, hey, I have to pay income tax on this. I should probably just have that taken out. Now, I understand that there's reasons why people don't want to do that. Be that as it may, that's their choice. Anyways, I'm digressing and moving further away from the topic. The point that the reason why I chose this clip is the fact that you have a woman, and in just using today's context here, a white woman telling a black man that he is wrong about his interpretation of what black people want, what the black society wants. And I just find that very hypocritical in the society. And the reason why I'm doing this expose, this video on Thomas Sowell, is because he's a black man that preaches preaches a strong word, talks about what a lot of people that are moderate to conservative talk about in society. That let's not go for the end result of everything being equal. Everybody's the same. Let's pull that back and let's go for the equal opportunity to get there, and let the results lay where they lay. People are inherently going to be hard workers, lazy, and everywhere in between. Why does it not stand to reason that we can, as a society, function as a society with everybody within that spectrum? And sorry for bumping the microphone, but having everybody within that spectrum. Why can we not, as a society, accept that equal opportunity is potentially better for our species than equal results. Because we might not have and this is all speculation, we might not have the same technological capabilities, given the mirrorless cameras, DSLR cameras, all-in-one recording solutions, the computer, the home computer even, if it weren't for people taking the initiative to tinker outside of what their normal 9-to-5 jobs were. And so, that's kind of my point with these clips with from the Free to Choose series here. So, all right, let's move on to the next clip.
Segment 3, intellectuals condescending. Intellectuals in society, quote, intellectuals give people who have the handicap of poverty the further handicap of a sense of victimhood.
Yes.
Close quote. Explain that, Tom.
Intellectuals have a great tendency to see poverty as a great moral problem to which they have the solution. Now, the human race began in poverty, so there's no mysterious explanation as to why some people are poor. The question is, why have some people gotten prosperous? And in particular, why have some gotten prosperous to a greater degree than others? But everybody started poor. So poverty is not a mystery to be solved by intellectuals. More than that, I think one of the things I wish I'd put more emphasis on in the book is that intellectuals have no interest in what creates wealth and what inhibits the creation of wealth. They are very concerned about the distribution of it, but they act as if wealth just exists somehow. And it's only a question, it's like manna from heaven. It's only a question of how we split it up.
And why should that be? Why shouldn't they find that question at least intellectually fascinating?
Because it would destroy the whole vision that they have.
So we have them talking about wealth and poverty and how intellectuals, and in Thomas Sowell's opinion, only understand the wealth as a concept that there is so much and we need to distribute it evenly, not understanding what drives what wealth is. Now, that's not to say that people don't understand the concept of supply and demand, things like that. But what makes one item of particular value more than another item that is very similar? One example I can think of, and if I remember to, I will grab screenshots of both, is what I'm using right now, the Rode Procaster and the Zoom, what is it? Zoom P8. I think that's what it is. Basically both portable podcast studios that you can connect up to your computers, etc. The point I'm trying to make is the Rode P8 seems to have more functionality in certain aspects than the Rodecaster Pro, but vice versa. So why does one cost $100 less than the other? Well, a lot of it has to do with the components. Not to say that Zoom is creating an inferior product at all. Zoom makes quite a lot of quality products. But Rode also makes quality products as well, which is why, you have to balance what is the value that people give. I gladly paid $600 for my Rodecaster, and I would drop that at $600 again in a heartbeat if I had the opportunity to, or if I had the need to. So, the point that I think that Thomas Sowell is making is not that intellectuals don't understand the concept of wealth. They don't understand what it is that it drives people to be wealthy. As he states at the beginning, intellectuals don't realize that, yes, we started out poor. I mean, hell, all of us start out poor in the beginning. It's just that how do our families help set us up for success going forward? Did my family pay for my college? No, because if they could have paid for my college, I would not have joined the Navy. Had I not joined the Navy, I wouldn't learn some of the skills that I have now. I wouldn't understand more of what I know now than what I did then. And that's not to say that my friends who didn't join the military didn't learn something valuable that I don't understand. It's quite simply just the nature of learning. And the wealth and value that we hold to things is in our understanding of the value of what it is we know and what we don't know. And I think that reading Thomas Sowell's work and reading other people's works helps us understand where the issues, and I say issues loosely here, the differences in what people that agree with us think and people that disagree with us think, and those that are in between. I don't agree with everybody on everything, and I don't agree with, and everybody doesn't agree with me on everything. So we all understand that there's a difference in the values of what it is that we understand. So let's move on to the last clip, and this one might be a little touchy, but I think that the clip is warranted to help give some other perspective to Thomas Sowell as an individual. So, next clip.
Staying on this subject of genetics, race, ethnic groups, and so forth, you talk, again, in Wealth, Poverty, and Politics, you describe 3 very selective, they're public high schools in New York, but they're very selective. You have to test to get into them. That's Stuyvesant High, your Stuyvesant High, Bronx Science, and Brooklyn Tech. Quote, "The triumph of egalitarian principles and demographic diversity in the rest of New York's educational system has not resulted in an increase in the number or proportion of Black or Hispanic students passing the admissions tests to get into Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, and Brooklyn Tech. On the contrary, the numbers and proportions of Black and Hispanic students have declined substantially over the years at all 3 institutions," close quote. So, telegram to Mayor de Blasio. As diversity becomes championed in the city of New York over the last 40 years, 50 years, diversity actually diminishes at these very selective high schools. Why?
Well, it's that the diversity really doesn't do anything for you. There are many cultural...
Doesn't do anything for you as a society? Or I'm sorry.
As a society or the people in whose interests you're promoting diversity. In other words, when Black, Hispanic kids go to schools other than those 3, they get a load of diversity. It doesn't do them any good. For example, as of about 2012 or 2014, I forget the exact one, the percentage of Blacks at Stuyvesant High School was 1/10 of what it was 33 years earlier. So it's been a major retrogression. And so while they're being their heads full of diversity, the Asian students are learning math and science. Plus, the schools are also, another point against diversity is that in years past, those schools were so heavily Jewish that Stuyvesant was referred to once as a free prep school for Jews. Well, they weren't diverse, but it was very successful. And now Asian Americans outnumber whites by more than 2 to 1 in all 3 of those schools. It's still not diverse, but they're turning out people who do marvelous things. And that's what they're there for, to benefit the society, not to present this tableau that will please a handful of people.
Got it.
Okay, so here you have Thomas Sowell talking about how diversity, for diversity's sake, is not beneficial to minorities. He went to one of these 3 prestigious schools back in the 40s and 50s. If I'm doing my math correctly, it would have been 40s. The point being, you would have to meet the educational rigors of the school to be able to be admitted in. That is something that I wholeheartedly agree with. Let people in based upon their merits, their ability to meet the standards for that school. I didn't try applying to Harvard or MIT or any of those schools, those Ivy League schools, for my college, not because of how long I've been out of the educational field, but because I knew that I would not be able to stand up to their educational rigors, their standards of practice. It's not to say that I couldn't have passed, but I would have been at the very low end. And yeah, some may say that being at the low end of an Ivy League school is better than being at the top end of a state school, but I don't think so. Because being at the low end, of an Ivy League school, people can look at that and be like, well, what was it that you weren't able to grasp? What are your learning deficiencies that these schools teach at, that, those types of things. Sticking to the high school realm of education, I don't agree with the way we do it now, where it's to a test, to the Common Core style, things like that. Now I understand, even back in the 50s, we had what was called the new math. Tom Lehrer, comedian slash song singer. One of his acts is teaching the new math in song form. So, and I kind of learned on that new math level. So, be that as it may. But the thing that I think is lacking really from education now is actually the arts, the home economics, the history, the social studies, geography, those types of things, where people can't even look at a map and be like, okay, this is where the U.S. is, or this is where Kansas is in the U.S., or this is where Utah is, or this is where Russia is. I don't expect people outside of the U.S. to know each individual state. They don't need to. It would be like asking me to know the exact shape of a county in the UK is, or a section of Russia, however they're divided up, into sections. But I should be able to at least go, okay, this is a map. Okay, without reading it, I should be able to know the shape of the country. Go, there's Russia, there's China, there's Mongolia in between the two of them. I should be able to do that. But we don't have that as much now. Kids should be able to graduate high school and be able to balance a checkbook, be able to look at their bank account statement and be like, okay, on their mobile apps, and be like, okay, I have this much money. This is what I just did, and it's not showing up yet, so I need to make sure that I keep that in mind. Those types of things. I mean, I've got people coming into my work not knowing how to check their tire pressure, and they have a license to drive, or they don't understand how to fill up a gas tank, those types of things. And it's not them I blame, it's the system that taught them that I blame. So, and sorry, long rambling rant here, but I agree with Thomas Sowell, Dr. Thomas Sowell, that the point is not the diversity itself. The point is we need to make sure that people are taught to a standard that is rigorous, but not elitist. And the way that we can do that is making sure that the opportunity is there for those that need the additional help to get the additional help. And we should not stigmatize that. That may mean that people who want to go to these, high-end schools, Stuyvesant, what was it? Brooklyn Tech, I think was one of the other ones. The point is, they might not be able to go to those schools, but if they go to another state public funded school, they can at least be able to get the education with the additional help that they need. I'm actually, early on, I was opposed to charter schools when they were first being brought up. Now, actually researching into it and stuff, I actually like the idea of a charter school better than I do the state public school systems. So, with that said, I said this was the last clip. It actually is not. I have one last clip. I'm sorry. I totally forgot about this little bit that I wanted to share. It's towards the end of the first clip's documentary that I was talking about. So, please stick around for that clip.
It's amazing how much panic one honest man can spread among a multitude of hypocrites.
Listen to this list. The Thomas Sowell Reader, 2011. Intellectuals and Race, 2013. A new edition of your classic work, Basic Economics, in 2014. Wealth, Poverty, and Politics, 2015. And now, 2018, Discrimination and Disparities. And do you know what I just did? I just listed the books you've published since turning 80.
So, everybody, sorry about this formatting here. I've tried recording this segment twice now. This particular one and my SD card is failing. So sorry about that. But be that as it may, let's get down to the nuts and bolts of that last clip. The whole point of that clip is not anything too profound, in my opinion. It is entirely just to show what people can do if they put their minds to it. That there is equal opportunity there for people to do what Thomas Sowell has done. They could be 80 years old and write 5 books before they're 88. Now, granted, I toss out the middle one or the second one, whatever one it was, his basic economics, whichever one that fell in there. But the point being that even if you throw that one out, 4 books in 8 years, that's quite the accomplishment. Now, that's not to say that we should all be measuring to try to achieve that level of success. Success, in my opinion, and this is probably the most profound part that I take from Thomas Sowell's readings and his videos that I've seen of him talking, is that it is specifically, we should measure our own success of our own life at our own level. That is to say that I cannot take care of society if I cannot take care of myself and understand where my successes are and where my failures are, and derive my own wealth, my own value to society in that. Not every person is going to be able to be the Jeff Bezos, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Michael Jordans, LeBron James, any of those people. Nobody else can be those people except for those people. Now, that's not to say that somebody else could have come up with the idea for those, alternate history, all that fun stuff. Check out Alt Hist Hub and What If Alt Hist for if you want alt history. They're actually really great channels. But the point being is that my success in life is not even going to be the same as even those that I graduated with. I should not go to and granted, I haven't been to a single high school reunion yet. I should try to fix that for the 25th. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that I shouldn't be trying to compare my success to my classmates, whether it be the ones that I directly graduated with from Wichita Valley, or my friends that I grew up with in the Aberdeen High School District, or the ones that moved over to the Hoquiam District, etc. I should not be comparing myself to them, because we each all went our own separate ways after high school. I joined the Navy. One of my friends went to college. Several of my friends went to college first. Some of my friends got jobs, then went to college. Several friends went to college and got jobs at the same time. Several went to work right out of high school. That's not to say that any of us are more successful than the others. What is success? My best friend went to college to become an accountant. He works as a controller for a real estate company. One of my other friends went into the Marine Corps, blew out his knee in basic. That doesn't mean that he was not successful. It just means that his line of work had to change. I joined the Navy. I didn't get out and do something right away with my Navy skills, nor did I go to college right away. That could be seen as a failure on my part, and I would consider it a failure on my part. But it doesn't mean that I'm an abject failure if I'm still working a low-paying job like I do. I just prioritize certain things differently than people. I am now working my way up the success ladder, so to speak, but it doesn't mean that I am not successful in my life. What is success? Is it being Thomas Sowell? Is it being Jeff Bezos? Or is it being the best person that I can be in society? That is ultimately what we have to figure out. I went to elementary school and middle school with Daniel Bryan, and 5 weeks of high school with Daniel Bryan of WWE fame. By all measures, we could call him a success. But does that mean that our mutual friends that live in the Seattle area, or that still live down in our hometown area, our home county area, that didn't move on really all that far, does that mean they're less successful than him? No. Does it mean that I'm less successful than him? No. It means that my level of success is what I define it to be. My friends that didn't go on to the WWE, their success is whatever they're doing. And some of them probably have very good jobs, very good, might even own their own businesses. That's considered successful as well. I've tried running 2 businesses of my own. One is a Herbalife and one is a travel agency. Both I would call abject failures, but I'm not going to learn how to run a business if I don't have those failures. It's like Thomas Edison is quoted saying he didn't fail what it was at 1,000 or 1,600 times to develop the light bulb. He just found 1,000 or whatever the number is, ways that it didn't work. That's the mentality we need to have as society. Not what's keeping me down, not what is there to be a failure in my life, but what is the success? What is it that makes me feel of worth and value to society? I know that in my job field, there's a high turnover rate. Why? Because it's not a glamorous job. It's not a great paying job. It's not a great progression job. But I take value in the fact that I can help customers. I can help people, not just with transactions, but I can help them in different ways. I can help them find the products they're looking for. Or in my case, since I work in a gas station, I can help give people directions to places. If I don't know the place directly, I can go get my phone and help show them, especially with older people that don't use smartphones, that still use maps. There's all sorts of ways that I can measure my level of success compared to other people. Does it mean that I am less valuable as a person in society? No. Does it mean I'm what some people would call a racist or a homophobe or a transphobe or any of that stuff? No. I'm providing this value to society. And the reason why I bring those aspects up, even though they're not really part of the thing, is that we as a society are now more concerned with everybody being level and even with each other, that we're losing sight of that not everybody can be at that level. Some people have to be lower than average, so there are people above average. And how you get there. And again, I think that I'm an above average person in a lot of aspects. But financially speaking, I'm in the lower part of our economy. Why? Because I chose, after 5 years in the Navy, to take 7 years not to get an education, to take 7 years and figure out what it is I wanted to do with my life. That doesn't make me a failure. That just means that I failed to act sooner rather than later. That's all. And that's my take from Thomas Sowell. Be the person that you want to be, that can be valuable to society in whatever way that you can be valuable to society. Not everybody can be above average. Not everybody can be average. Not everybody's going to be below average. But we have to have that range, because if we're all equal, then nobody is going to create what we need to create to go further as a society. I take a look at it. Would we have the society of Star Trek without the society we have today? The answer is going to be no, because we're not going to have people driving to be creative, to figure these problems out. So with that, if you like this, go ahead and hit the like button. If you disliked it, hit the dislike button. Leave me a comment. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe if you want to. And if you do subscribe, make sure you hit the bell notification. I am trying to work on being more consistent as a content creator. It's going to be a process. I will be successful at times and I will fail at times. But it's the fact of trying that will keep it going. And also, if you'd like to check me out, I'm on twitch.tv. Go ahead and check it out. It is not Thoughts by Jay Brown, though. It is Zeke373. I will have a link down below. And come hang out and enjoy some gaming. I try not to talk about politics there. It's just literally banter and talking about games. So, and with that, peace. Okay, Jay, why the hell? We did this in the first and second time we did this video. Why did you forget it again? So, for those of you that know, I am trying to make this a better channel. I'm trying to improve my just overall quality of product as well as consistency of product. And because of that, I have been using Patreon, and I've had one supporter. And I don't feel that it's right to charge the supporter after a year of life just being in the way, and also COVID. Let's not forget about that. I don't feel it's fair to be charging them any sort of tier. So I've suspended my Patreon for this month, and I'll probably suspend it for April as well, as I work to revamp the tiers as well as revamp the rewards that come with it. I have pretty much made up my Discord server. I just haven't launched it. I haven't done anything with it yet, and I need to figure it out. And we all have a million Discord servers because it's kind of been popular, but be that as it may, I'm not going to be promoting my Patreon or Subscribestar or anything like that until I can figure out my brand, until I can figure out what it is that this channel needs and what it is that my other channels need. So thank you for your patience, and thank you for understanding. And by the next video, I hope to have a new outro. So for what it's worth, thank you again for watching. Take care.